Check out this lake. It's a great spot for a family getaway. You can fish, swim, chill by the shore, and listen to the birds sing. In short, it's beautiful. But the edges of this lake give off the impression that things here aren't as simple as they seem. Is it even a lake, though? About 30 years ago, this one, and many other lakes in the area didn't even exist. The region they're in used to be considered one of the dirtiest in eastern Germany, and the area looked pretty much like this. So today we'll talk about how and why Germany flooded its coal mines. But first, I'll go make some good coffee. Just an unobtrusive reminder to hit the like button if you forget, but if you don't put likes, there's no need. And thanks to those who understand, you know what. In the 1980s, a satellite flying over central Germany would have seen a lot of large open-pit mines where lignite was being extracted. This is a type of brown coal which has been and still is used to generate electricity. Lignite mining started in central Germany about 150 years ago, and the country quickly became the world's leading producer of brown coal. In the 19th century, the open mines were still small and the extraction was done manually. Unlike darker coal, lignite deposits are often found close to the surface, so it's easiest to just strip away the layers from the top rather than digging underground mines. Over time, technology kept getting better and mines got bigger, which of course harmed the environment. In the end, lignite extraction transformed about 683 square miles of countryside, damaging the land and water, forcing not just animals, but people to relocate, and also increasing greenhouse gas emissions. It wasn't until the 1990s that some lignite mines in central Germany started shutting down. The policy shifted, and public concern about the consequences began to increase. Also, new energy sources emerged. But don't think the mines are gone entirely. They're still around, still working, and still extracting coal for the country. However, some mines where the coal ran out and there's nothing left to mine have changed for good. As soon as mining stopped, the landscape was so ruined it looked like the moon. At one point, there were even plans to offer tours called A Trip to Mars. But then the concept changed, and what were once mines has now been rehabilitated for completely different purposes, with many people, including the miners themselves and officials, working together to fill the mines with water. In total, at least 140 lignite mines were flooded. The idea of turning mines into recreational lakes actually started in the GDR back in 1973, when one of the mines near Senftenberg was flooded on the recommendation of landscape planner Otto Reindt. The Senftenberg Lake, nicknamed the Dresden's Bathtub, later became the model for the current development. After the reunification of the country, the remaining mines either came under the management of the Swedish company Vattenfall or were handed over to the federal company LMBV and turned into recreational areas. But before that could be done, a lot of problems had to be solved. One of them was the cost. Cleaning up the aftermath of the mines was estimated at $13.5 million. However, the German government covered these expenses. The water used to fill the lakes was often sourced from a few big rivers like the Spree and Black Elster. It was also drawn from groundwater or from water left behind after draining other still operating mines. One should point out that creating new lakes is an ongoing process. From the end of coal mining to reaching the desired final water level in the lake, it may take decades. However, it's not just about the water. In some cases, the transformation of an old mine into a lake requires extensive earthworks. First of all, and this is obviously clear, all the infrastructure of the quarry and all the heavy equipment had to be dismantled right after the mine stopped. Let's take Lake Cottbusser Ostsee as an example, which formed in the spot of the Cottbus Nord mine, where they used to mine brown coal. After mining stopped, around 706 million cubic feet of backfilled earth was redistributed to the center of the lake. This was needed to ensure the lake could be safely used, for example, for boating and fishing. The excavated earth was used to fill in the old coal railroad ramp and create a bay. At the large Cottbusser Ostsee construction site, about 140 excavators were used daily. They also worked on reinforcing the shoreline. First, the natural shores to the south, west, and north, which were not affected by the mountain work, were profiled and flattened. The eastern shore and the coastal islands were created using quarry equipment. After that, additional stabilization measures were needed, and only at the end of all these works was the lake ready to be filled. It should be said here that lakes can form in places of former mines even without human help. After mining ends, big craters are left and they usually fill up with water. This happens gradually either because of groundwater or rainfall, or a combination of both. It makes sense since the mines where they extract lignite are shaped like a reservoir. It's a low area and water tends to accumulate in places like that. So people aren't really doing anything special, they're just speeding up a natural process. And of course, they're getting some benefit from it. So as you might have guessed, there are quite a few artificial lakes in Germany, which used to be mines but have since retired. However, the largest one is Geiseltalsee. It's hard to believe that this place was once extremely polluted. The locals never hung their laundry outside and never wore white socks because they knew that just a few minutes later they wouldn't be white anymore. Coal dust was everywhere, all the time. Now look at this untouched landscape. Pine forests, meadows, the sparkling calm of the water, and the perfect bike paths. This used to be a quarry, closed in 1993, and it looked like a quarry. The Geiseltalsee Lake now covers about 7 square miles, and vineyards have been planted along its shores. The water surface helps reflect sunlight onto the vines, and the humidity around the lake helps protect them from frost in the winter. Experts say that extremely acidic soils, typical of excavated areas, can stunt growth of most plants, but are perfect for grapes. Right now, producers are making 3 types of white wines: rosé, red, and sparkling wine from grapes grown on the former mine site. And the number of these lakes is only growing. Instead of coal plants, the horizons are now lined with wind turbines and fields packed with solar panels. While roughly 22% of electricity in Germany still comes from burning lignite and another 12% from hard coal, about 33% of energy is now generated from renewable sources. And mines turn into lakes. One of the most popular quarry lakes for vacationers is south of Leipzig in an area called Neusenland, where there are at least 4 active lignite mines. This image was taken in 1987, and this one, where you can already see the lakes, was taken in 2020. By the way, the images are in false colors. Vegetation is red, while urban areas range from yellowish brown to gray. With these kinds of images, it's easier to spot changes in the landscape, and the water stands out much better than if the picture were all green. Here's how the same area looked in 2020 with natural colors. Honestly, it's a bit of an eyesore. The land managers in Neusenland are planning to flood about 20 mines over the next few decades. Many of the lakes will connect with each other in nearby rivers, creating a network of waterways stretching over 125 miles. The development of this region is seen as one of the greatest success stories of the former East Germany. Bike paths run around each lake, with many intersecting to create a network stretching nearly 310 miles. Some lakes, of course, remain fairly untouched, while others, like the more eastern Spreetaler Sea, are a hub for water sports. The most developed lakes, Senftenberger and Geierswalder, are linked by a canal that cost over $50 million and focused on family-friendly fun. Here you'll find beaches, cafes, and restaurants, plus all sorts of activities from fishing and horseback riding to ATV rides and diving. In short, everything your heart desires. It's no surprise that the number of visitors rises by 10% annually. And now I have a question. Is the water in those kinds of lakes even safe? I mean, there were mines there, and that doesn't exactly sound healthy. In fact, this is one of the problems with creating lakes in place of quarries. If you just fill up the pit with water, the acidity will be like vinegar because of the minerals stirred up during mining. So to make the lake safe for people and animals, they either flush it with river water or toss in some limestone to raise the pH level. If you don't deal with this, you might end up facing several issues at once, like too much phosphorus or nitrogen, pollution from industrial substances, and even heavy salinity in the groundwater. Luckily, Germany has plenty of natural water sources to tackle the problem and treat the water until it's safe. Not everyone's that lucky, though. For example, in Australia, water shortages make it really tough to rehabilitate mines. All right, we've figured out the flooding technology, but why do they even do it? Turns out there are several reasons. First of all, over the next decade, the world will start phasing out coal. This means mines will no longer be needed and we'll have to find ways to restore and reuse the land they were on. What Germany's doing is exactly that kind of initiative. Secondly, lakes are needed to create places for people to relax, for fishing, for water sports. In short, they're really useful. The Geierswald and Partwitz lakes have become popular spots for recreation. By the way, this clear turquoise color is a result of adding quicklime to the water to neutralize the acidity from the closed mine. And third, of course, there's the wildlife. Since the lakes appeared in place of the mines, around 30,000 species of animals and plants have been drawn to the region. This, in turn, led to an increase in biodiversity. And these aren't just any mice and dandelions, but animals and plants that were pushed out of most of Europe's intensively farmed landscapes. Among them are wolves, hoopoe birds, and a plant called great horsetail. All of them are reclaiming territories that just a few years ago were considered dead. Lakes also provide extra benefits by acting as flood mitigation systems, and these systems have already saved the government tens of millions of dollars that would have been spent on flood damage repairs. No floods means no damage. The money can be used for something else. And finally, the economy. Former mining regions are now attracting more investment and providing more jobs than the average in the country. These lakes can also be used for generating solar power. All over the world, solar plants are replacing coal mines. A simple example. In the city of Cottbus, one of the artificial lakes in a long-abandoned coal mine in Lusatia is set to become the site for the largest floating solar farm in Germany. Construction of the farm, with a peak capacity of 21 megawatts, was supposed to start in 2023. Maybe Germany's just doing the same thing as other countries. Last year, the largest solar power plant in Slovenia was built in the mining region of Zasavia. Where was it built? On the land where a coal power plant once stood. In the Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region of China, the Burtai open-cast coal mine, covering an area of about 77 square miles, was repurposed with the use of 1.12 million solar panels. It's said that after efforts to make the whole area green didn't work out, they chose to put in a solar installation as a more eco-friendly option. Now, old pits are being filled with solar panels, and something's growing underneath them. Experts believe while restoring quarries is usually expensive and takes a lot of time, this kind of transformation will become more and more common. The more global the shift away from coal becomes, the more mines will be repurposed. Besides, a lot of countries already have so little land that they can't afford to just waste the space from old mines. It's better to repurpose it for something useful than leave it meaningless. Meanwhile, in New Zealand, an open gold mine that stopped operating in 2016 has been reopened with the aim of restoring the local ecosystem. Over half of the site, around 642 acres, which was cut from the surrounding hillside, has been fully revegetated as part of the Reefton Restoration Project. The project was initiated and carried out by the company that owned the mine, Oceana Gold. Right now, about 800,000 beech and local tree seedlings have been planted on the plot, and later they plan to grow another 200,000 seedlings on the new topsoil layer. An additional 64,000 wetland plants will take up the shores of the shallow lake. Reshaping and greening the barren lands also part of the efforts to increase biodiversity on the site, and it's barely recognizable. Just a few years ago, it was nothing but a bare quarry. Meanwhile, in the U.S., there's a unique situation with the mines. Mining companies here have to rehabilitate old quarries, even though thousands of them are left abandoned because of the costs involved. Due to the high levels of chemical residue in the exposed rocks and soil, it's very difficult to do anything without adding an extra layer of soil. However, in the vast coal mining region of West Virginia, one plant thrives even in the poor, nearly dead soil of former quarries. That plant is lavender. Lavender usually grows on dry, rocky soils around the Mediterranean, but it's successfully grown in an eco-friendly way on former mining sites by the Appalachian Botanical Company. This same company also processes lavender oil to make cosmetics and culinary products. Usually, forests are planted for the rehabilitation of quarries in West Virginia, but it's slow and expensive. Lavender, on the other hand, grows quickly and doesn't need much. It doesn't require any chemicals or pesticides. It doesn't even need much water. Lavender also attracts honeybees, important pollinators that help restore and maintain biodiversity on depleted lands. And as a bonus, growing lavender provides jobs for people who were working in the coal industry and lost their jobs due to the shift to renewable energy. Plus, lavender smells great. The biggest news of the past few days is that I've put up a Christmas tree at home for the first time. Now I'll be looking forward to Christmas with all my might. Heat pump in a lake. How else can old mines be used? For example, for heating. But this time I'm not talking about coal. I have already mentioned the city of Cottbus, located in eastern Germany. Well, they plan to install a powerful heat pump in an artificial lake created in a former coal mine. This project could supply up to 40% of the city's heating needs, which is pretty cool. After all, the country plans to fully phase out coal energy by the 2030s. It's expected that Kottbusser Ostsee will serve as an effective heat accumulator, but how will all this work? It's simple. As you go deeper into the earth, the water temperature in the mines rises, making it a potential resource for heating. Normally, the water temperature there ranges from 50 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, but at a depth of 3,300 feet, it can already reach 104 degrees Fahrenheit. So the deeper the mine, the hotter the water you can get from it. The only thing left to do is set up the heat pumps that'll pump the water and feed it into heating systems. Besides being eco-friendly, this heating method is also practical since it doesn't depend on the season. The temperature inside the shaft stays stable all the time. Plus, the water from the shafts can be used for both heating and cooling the rooms. In short, it's all pros and no cons. From mine to a battery. In fact, using abandoned coal mines for energy purposes is a very common practice in Germany. For example, the country plans to turn one of them into a large-scale battery. There in the mine, energy from hydroelectric plants will be stored, and it's expected that such a storage system will be able to supply electricity to about 400,000 households. I'm talking about the Prosper Haniel mine located in the northwest of Germany, which mined coal for over 50 years before it was shut down in 2018. Its 2,000-foot depth offers a unique opportunity for the region that lacks elevation changes needed for pumped storage power plants. Besides the elevation, the region also needs reservoirs, and the mine could serve as one of them. Water can be pumped out on days when there's an excess of energy, allowing it to be stored in an upper reservoir until needed. You know how this works. They also plan to build a station near the mine with a capacity of 200 megawatts, which will get electricity from wind turbines, solar panels, and biomass sources placed on the surface above the mine. Throw in pump storage hydroelectric plants, and you'll have a full-blown power plant. The most beautiful mine. When you think of a coal mine, beauty probably doesn't come to mind. But the Zollverein mine can totally change the way you look at places like that. After it was closed, the land became a place that's now loved by both locals and tourists. In a nutshell, the mine has become a real museum. But what's a museum without tours? Naturally, they're offered here. You can walk through the mine, listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, every weekend around 3 p.m. The use of audiovisual effects further immerses you in the coal mining and sorting process. You can hear the sounds of the carts rolling by. However, for those who like to explore underground, I have bad news. You can't get there because the mine is closed. Still, even without going underground, there's plenty to see in the museum and around it. For example, you can see huge pits on the surface representing the coal past. While nature's slowly taking over, lush greenery spreads all over the industrial zone. Locals use this place for walking and cycling, and they even hold outdoor events here. In the winter, you can even go ice skating. It's amazing how an old coal mine turned into a landmark. I've never heard of anything like this before. Have you? Unallowable luxury. But let's go back to the flooding of mines. We've already talked about how many mines in Germany were shut down, leaving behind huge pits that were later flooded for various purposes. In Australia, they're also actively closing mines due to the shift away from fossil fuels. But what Australia is dealing with right now is something Germany dealt with years ago. They need to do something about dangerous quarries, and filling them with water seems like the best idea. However, in Australia, as I've mentioned, it's not that simple. Potential problems include the environmental impact from taking large amounts of water and the safety of future water bodies for public use. You remember what the climate in Australia is like, right? Water's a very valuable resource here. In Germany, though, it's a different story. In some regions, there's an excess of water, which allows for filling huge quarries using redirected streams, underground sources, rainfall, and treated wastewater from active mines. In the Australian Latrobe Valley Coal Basin, such resources are much more limited. For example, just to flood one of the coal mines, it would take more water than is in all of Sydney Harbour. It's interesting that the people in this Australian region are also actively involved in the fate of the mines. They suggest a lot of ways to flood them, but as I said, it's not easy to do, so the authorities aren't really getting behind these ideas. What's the solution here? I have no idea. The full list of rehabilitation methods hasn't been disclosed, and their fate is still undecided. Nature over coal. Norway, unlike Australia, seems to really know what to do with former coal mining sites. The Svea mine, which is a 40-minute helicopter ride from Longyearbyen, the main town in Svalbard, was shut down after extracting 34 million metric tons of coal over its entire operation. Basically, the mine served its purpose, retired, and it was time to figure out what to do with it. As part of the largest environmental project, Norway is restoring the natural state of the mine area, investing around $1.4 million. It's a lot of money, but for Norway, it's really important to preserve the nature of Svalbard, so the costs aren't the main concern. And yes, the country's just helping nature to recover on its own. The plan is that the free-flowing streams and avalanches will help move the sediments and create new waterways. This will gradually clear the area of coal mining remnants. It's important to note that Norway, like many other countries, is moving away from fossil fuel extraction. In Longyearbyen, for instance, 6 of the 7 coal mines are already closed, and the last one will be shut down by 2025. From now on, Svalbard's economy will be centered on tourism and scientific research. Many support these changes, but there are also those against them. They argue that even though the country's moving away from coal, it still exports tons of oil, and that doesn't really line up with going green. Since you've made it this far, you owe me an ultra unobtrusive like. See you later.